Want to know if your Japanese skills are improving and what your real learning level is? Get your language skills assessed with our free level assessment test. Just click the link in the description and sign up for a free lifetime account to get assessed.
Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember how to say, "Nice to meet you"? はじめまして。はじめまして。And do you remember how to say, "Pleased to meet you"? よろしくお願いします。よろしくお願いします。Do you remember the word for I? 私。私。And the topic marking particle? は。は。Do you remember how Mark Lee says his name? リーマーク。リーマーク。Do you remember how Mark Lee says, "I'm Mark Lee"? 私はリーマークです。私はリーマークです。All together, do you remember how Mark introduces himself?
はじめまして。私はリーマークです。よろしくお願いします。
はじめまして。私はリーマークです。よろしくお願いします。Finally, do you remember how Ken Kobayashi introduces himself?
はじめまして。私は小林です。よろしくお願いします。
はじめまして。私は小林です。よろしくお願いします。
Let's review the key vocabulary.
札幌。
札幌。
札幌。札幌。シアトル。
Seattle.
シアトル。シアトル。ロンドン。
London.
ロンドン。ロンドン。長崎。
Nagasaki.
長崎。長崎。Let's review. Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember how to say hometown? 出身。出身。And the topic marking particle? は。は。Do you remember how to say New York? ニューヨーク。ニューヨーク。And do you remember how Mark says, "I'm from New York"?
出身はニューヨークです。
出身はニューヨークです。Do you remember how to say where? どこどこ and the question marking particle かか Do you remember how Ken Kobayashi asks, Where are you from?
出身はどこですか？
出身はどこですか Do you remember how to say London? ロンドンロンドン and how to say Seattle? シアトルシアトル Do you remember how to say 長崎長崎長崎
Let's review the key vocabulary.
教師
Teacher. When a teacher is talking about his or her own occupation.
教師教師
Note.
先生
Is also commonly used to mean teacher, but when you talk about your own occupation,
教師
is commonly used.
エンジニア
Engineer.
エンジニアエンジニア看護師
Nurse.
看護師看護師医者
Doctor.
医者医者バリスタ
Barista.
バリスタバリスタ Let's review. Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember how to say investor? 投資家投資家 And how Ken says, I'm an investor. 投資家です投資家です Do you remember how to say student? 学生学生 And how Ken says, I'm not a student. 学生ではありません。学生ではありません。Do you remember how to say no? いいえ。いいえ。Do you remember how Ken says, No, I'm not a student. I'm an investor.
「いいえ、学生ではありません。投資家です」。
いいえ、学生ではありません。投資家です。Do you remember how Mark addresses Mr. Kobayashi? 小林さん、小林さん。Do you remember how to say the question marking particle? かか And how Mark asks, Mr. Kobayashi, are you a student?
小林さんは学生ですか？
小林さんは学生ですか？ Do you remember how to say engineer? エンジニア engineer and how to say doctor? 医者医者 Do you remember the word commonly used for teacher when talking about one's own occupation? 教師教師 Let's review. Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember how to say phone number? 電話番号電話番号 And how to say my phone number? 私の電話番号私の電話番号 Do you remember the topic marking particle? は Do you remember how Mark says, My phone number is 090-0123-4567?
私の電話番号は090-0123-4567です。
私の電話番号は090-0123-4567です。Do you remember how to say please? お願いします。お願いします。And the object marking particle? お Do you remember how the civil servant addresses Mr. Lee? リーさん リーさん And do you remember the civil servant's request? Mr. Lee, your phone number please.
リーさん、電話番号をお願いします。
リーさん、電話番号をお願いします。
Let's review the key vocabulary.
姉、
My older sister,
姉、姉。弟、
my younger brother,
お、と、う、と。弟。
Note, these words are part of the set of words that one only uses when speaking about one's own family members with others.
Let's review. Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember how to say yes? はいはい And how to say me? 私私 Do you remember how to say and? と And the word for my younger sister. 妹 Do you remember the word for my mother? 母 And the word for my father. 父 Do you remember how Ben says, "This is my father, mother, younger sister, and me"?
父と母と妹と私です。
父と母と妹と私です。Do you remember how to say family? 家族 And how Hannah addresses Ben. ベン君 Do you remember how to say Ben's family? ベン君の家族 And do you remember how Hannah asks, "Is this your family?"
ベン君の家族ですか？
ベン君の家族ですか？ Do you remember the word for my younger brother? 弟 And a word for my older sister. 姉 Do you remember the word for my older brother? 兄
Did you take your free level assessment yet? Here's an extra bonus resource you'll get when you take the assessment. When you receive your result and learning level, you also unlock a free language course for your specific level, so you can start learning and level up your language skills. Just click the link in the description to get access.
Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember how to say me? 私 And how to say and? と Do you remember the word for daughter? 娘 And the word for son. 息子 Do you remember how Karen says, "my husband"? 夫 And how to say yes. はい Do you remember how Colin says, "This is my husband, son, daughter, and me"?
夫と息子と娘と私です。
夫と息子と娘と私です。Do you remember how to say family? 家族 And how the teacher addresses Karen? Hint, she uses her last name, Lee. リーさん Do you remember how the teacher says, Miss Lee's family? リーさんの家族。リーさんの家族。Do you remember how the teacher asks, Is this your family?
リーさんの家族ですか？
リーさんの家族ですか？ Do you remember the word for wife? 妻。妻。Let's review. Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember the polite way to say, Good morning? おはようございます。おはようございます。Do you remember how to say, Good afternoon? こんにちは。こんにちは。Do you remember how to say, Good evening? こんばんは。こんばんは。Let's review. Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember how Karen says, See you? じゃあまた。じゃあまた。When using polite Japanese, do you remember how to say, Good night? おやすみなさい。おやすみなさい。And the informal way to say good night. おやすみ。おやすみ。Do you remember how Mickey Mori says, See you later? またね。またね。Do you remember how Mickey Mori says, See you later, good night? またね、おやすみ。またね、おやすみ。Let's review. Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember how to say, Excuse me? すみません。すみません。And how to say, Yes? はい。はい。When using polite Japanese, do you remember how to say, Thank you? ありがとうございます。ありがとうございます。And how to say, You're welcome? どういたしまして。どういたしまして。Do you remember how to say, I'm sorry? すみません。すみません。And how to say, It's alright. 大丈夫です。大丈夫です。
Let's review the key vocabulary.
まあまあ。
So-so,
まあまあ。まあまあ。Let's review. Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember how to say, well? 元気、元気 and the question mark in particle? か、か Do you remember how Mark asks, how are you?
元気ですか？
元気ですか Do you remember how to say yes? はい。はい。And how Yoshi Nakamura says, yes, I'm well.
はい、元気です。
はい、元気です。Do you remember how to say so-so? まあまあ。まあまあ。And how to say Mark's family name, Lee, in Japanese? Lee. Lee. Do you remember how to say Mr. Lee? Lee さん。Lee さん。
Now, here's what you can do to cement this conversation in your head. Review the conversation with our dialogue tool and lesson transcripts. Study the key words and phrases with our spaced repetition flashcards. Review the key grammar and cultural tips inside the lesson notes. And test yourself with our assessment tests. So click the link in the description right now and sign up for your free lifetime account to access our Can-Do course.